Let me tell you something real. Your life is already speaking louder than you think. Every step you take, every choice you make is painting a picture of who you are and what you stand for. People think legacy is something that comes later, after they've made millions, after their name is famous, after they're long gone. But the truth is, your legacy is being written right now, in this very moment, with the decisions you're making today. You don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to wait for the world to recognize you. You are already writing your story. And the question is, what kind of story is it? Is it a story of excuses or growth? A story of fear or courage? A story of wasted chances or bold moves? Because the world doesn't remember intentions, it remembers actions. It doesn't remember what you hope to do, it remembers what you actually did. So if you want to change the way people speak your name tomorrow, you've got to change the way you're living today. Legacy isn't built someday, it's built now in the grind, in the sacrifice, in the vision you carry. Every decision carries weight, whether you realize it or not. And the truth is, no choice you make is ever neutral. People sometimes believe that only the big decisions matter, like choosing a career, a partner, or where to live. But the reality is that even the smallest choices hold the power to shape your path. Think about it, what you choose to eat, how you choose to spend your free time, who you choose to call when you're upset, what you choose to listen to when you wake up. Every single one of these actions is planting a seed. That seed will either grow into something that empowers you or something that holds you back, but once it's planted, it's part of the soil of your life. When Jay-Z talks about decisions writing your future in permanent ink, he's talking about that exact truth, the fact that nothing you do is without consequence. The decision you made yesterday will greet you tomorrow, and the decisions you make today will stand at the door of your future waiting to welcome you in or block your entry. Think about how someone like Jay-Z came up from nothing, surrounded by circumstances that could have easily swallowed him whole. Born in Brooklyn's Marcy Projects, he grew up around crime, drugs, and despair. Every day he saw examples of people making choices that looked good in the moment but destroyed their tomorrow. He could have followed that same path and stayed there forever. But the difference was he understood that each decision was weighty. Selling a song versus wasting time on the corner, saving his money versus blowing it fast, saying no to people who wanted to drag him down versus blending in with the crowd. Those weren't just casual moments, they were turning points, forks in the road where one decision made the difference between being forgotten and being remembered. That's the weight of decisions. They may look light when you hold them in your hand, but once you drop them onto the timeline of your life, they carry the weight of your entire destiny. The permanent ink idea means there is no way to erase what's been written. Sure, you can pivot, you can rewrite new chapters, you can outgrow your past, but you can't pretend it never happened. The world will always know the choices you made because they leave behind trails, your reputation, your habits, your results. If you chose discipline, it shows in your achievements. If you chose laziness, it shows in your missed opportunities. If you chose courage, it shows in the risks you took that turned into success. And if you chose fear, it shows in the moments you let pass you by. There's no hiding the pen strokes of your decisions. People will read your life story even if you never publish a book. The weight of your choices is so heavy because it's not only about you, it affects everyone connected to you, your family, your friends, your community, even the next generation. A bad decision can become a curse passed down, and a good decision can become a blessing that keeps giving long after you're gone. Every time you say yes to something, you're also saying no to something else. That's why every decision carries weight. You don't just pick a road, you abandon all the other roads that could have been yours. If you decide to stay stuck in anger, you're closing the door on peace. If you decide to settle for average, you're turning your back on greatness. If you decide to ignore your calling, you're letting someone else write your story for you. That's why people who treat decisions like they're lightweight end up stuck in regret later. Because they didn't understand the cost. Jay-Z knew that the choices he made would not just fade away, they would stamp his life permanently. That's why he moved with intentionality, calculated risk, and a focus that outlived the noise around him. When you see him standing as a billionaire mogul today, it's easy to think it just happened, but if you trace it back, you'll see a trail of decisions, each one carrying weight, each one pressing into the future with permanent ink. Small habits compound into destiny, and most people underestimate just how powerful the little things are in shaping who they become. We often think it's the dramatic, once in a lifetime decisions that create our future, but the truth is it's the consistent, repetitive actions we take every single day that build the momentum of our lives. If you wake up late every day, if you scroll on your phone instead of reading, if you eat carelessly, if you spend reckless, you may not feel the damage in a week, but give it a year, give it 5 years, and the sum of those habits will weigh on you like chains. On the flip side, if you choose discipline in small doses, reading for 15 minutes daily, saving a portion of your income, practicing your craft even when no one is watching, those small decisions don't just add up, they multiply, compounding into something far greater than the effort you put in. Jay-Z understood this principle long before the world recognized him. When he was just a hustler with a notebook full of rhymes, he didn't wait for someone to hand him a microphone or a record deal. He made a habit of writing constantly, perfecting his flow, refining his lyrics, and treating his art as if it already mattered. He developed the discipline of consistency, and that's what separated him from the people who only rapped when they felt inspired. By turning the small habit of writing into a daily practice, he compounded his skill into mastery and mastery into opportunity. That's the unseen work, the grind, The quiet hours that look insignificant at the time but become the very foundation of destiny. When you think about the compounding effect of habits, imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it's tiny, almost laughable. But as it keeps rolling, picks up more snow, more weight, more speed until it becomes unstoppable. That's exactly how your daily choices operate. One workout doesn't make you healthy, but 100 workouts stacked one on top of the other transform your body. $1 saved doesn't make you rich, but a habit of saving builds wealth over time. One kind word doesn't change your reputation, but a consistent pattern of kindness creates trust and influence. Habits are the invisible ink of your life story, quietly writing your future line by line until the chapters are finished. The danger comes when people underestimate the power of small habits because they look so harmless. Skipping a day at the gym doesn't ruin you. Eating one unhealthy meal doesn't hurt you. Procrastinating once doesn't destroy your future. But the problem isn't the single choice, it's the pattern. Repetition carves grooves into your character, and once those grooves are deep enough, they become who you are. If you're disciplined with small things, you'll be disciplined when big opportunities arrive. If you're careless with the small things, you'll crumble when pressure comes. Jay-Z didn't wait until he was famous to practice discipline. He built discipline in the shadows so he could shine in the spotlight. The compounding power of habits also explains why success feels slow at first but explosive later. In the beginning, you're putting in the work and seeing almost no results. You're writing songs nobody hears, studying when no one cares, saving money that looks too small to matter. That's the stage where most people quit because the payoff looks invisible. But the few who stay consistent reach the point where momentum kicks in and suddenly everything accelerates. Jay-Z went from selling CDs out of the trunk of his car to running Rockefeller Records. But that wasn't magic. It was the compound effect of years of small, disciplined habits that built credibility, skill, and leverage until success became unavoidable. Destiny isn't some mystical force waiting to be revealed. It's the harvest of the seeds you plant every day. The small habits you practice are like whispers to your future, and they never go unheard. Every glass of water instead of soda, every page you read instead of scrolling, every hour you put into your craft instead of wasting time, all of it compounds into the person you're becoming. Jay-Z's story proves that the little things matter more than we think because they aren't little at all. They're the permanent ink writing the direction of your life. One decision, one habit, one day at a time. Ownership mindset is the difference between drifting through life and taking control of your future. And when Jay-Z says your decisions are written in permanent ink, what he's really saying is that you can't blame anyone else for what gets written down. Every line on your page is your responsibility, whether it's success, failure, or lessons in between. An ownership mindset means you stop waiting for someone else to fix your life. Stop pointing fingers at your environment, your upbringing, your government, your boss, or your friends. It means you accept that your life is the result of your choices. And if you want something different, you have to make different decisions. That's why excuses are so dangerous. They create the illusion that you're powerless, when in reality you're holding the pen. Jay-Z embodies this mindset. In the early days, no record label wanted to sign him. No one was willing to take the risk on a Kid from Marcy projects. So instead of sitting around bitter, he took ownership. He started Rockefeller Records with his partners, selling his music independently, funding his own vision. That was ownership in action, refusing to wait for approval from the industry and instead building his own lane. The world sees the billionaire now, but what created that man was the decision to stop asking for permission and start taking control. That's the ownership mindset, seeing obstacles not as dead ends, but as signals that you need to create your own opportunities. When you live with an ownership mindset, your perspective on mistakes changes. You don't run from them. You learn from them because you know those mistakes are yours. When you say, this is my fault, you also open the door to say, this is my chance to fix it. But when you live with a victim mindset, you give away your power. You let other people hold the pen, and then you're shocked when your story doesn't look the way you wanted. Jay-Z understood that even his past mistakes didn't define him unless he chose to stay in them. Ownership meant acknowledging the decisions he made growing up, but also refusing to let those decisions be the final chapter. He rewrote his life not by erasing the past, but by taking control of the present. And ownership mindset also changes how you treat your time and energy. If you know your decisions are permanent, you stop wasting energy on things that don't serve your future. You stop entertaining drama, stop investing in people who don't invest back, stop giving hours to distractions that rob you of progress. Jay-Z talks about how he turned down short-term pleasure for long-term growth because he knew every careless decision was permanent ink that would stain his legacy. That's why he built companies, invested in art, created businesses beyond music. He wasn't waiting for someone else to secure his future. He was writing it with every intentional move. The power of ownership is that it removes the illusion of luck. People love to say someone got lucky, but ownership teaches you that luck is simply preparation meeting opportunity. Jay-Z didn't stumble into billionaire status. He wrote it with permanent ink by consistently owning his choices. From his lyrics to his business deals, he treated every step as a reflection of him, something that would last beyond the moment. That's why he pushed for ownership of his masters, why he invested in companies, why he refused to be boxed in by one identity. Ownership means legacy, because when you own your decisions, you're not just living for today. You're building something that will outlive you. Every decision you make without ownership is like leaving your story in someone else's hands. You let them decide how you're remembered, what you achieve, what opportunities you receive. But when you live with ownership, you take back the pen and declare, "This is my life, and I'm responsible for every line written." That doesn't mean life will always be fair, but it means you'll never sit helpless, because you know the ink only flows when you move your own hand. Jay-Z's entire career proves that the ownership mindset isn't optional if you want greatness. It's the foundation. The moment you take ownership of your choices, you stop waiting for life to happen and start writing your future in bold. Permanent ink ownership mindset is about understanding that your life is your responsibility and no one else's, and that realization changes everything about the way you move. When Jay-Z says your decisions are writing your future in permanent ink, the weight behind those words comes from the fact that you can't outsource accountability. You can't hand the pen to somebody else and then complain about how your story looks. If the script doesn't read right, it's not because life betrayed you. It's because somewhere along the way you gave away control. Ownership means grabbing the pen back and saying, "I'm responsible for this page. I'm responsible for this chapter. I'm responsible for this ending." That's what separates leaders from followers, winners from victims, people who build legacies from people who disappear without a trace. Look at Jay-Z's life. He could have leaned on excuses forever. He was born into poverty, raised in Marcy projects, surrounded by crime, watching friends fall into the trap of quick money and quick destruction. If he had chosen to point fingers, he could have said, "The system is rigged, the labels won't sign me, the streets are all I know." But he chose differently. He chose ownership. When no label wanted him, he didn't beg, he didn't cry. He built his own lane and started Rockefeller Records. That was more than music, it was a mindset, a declaration that no one else would dictate the terms of his future. That move proved that when you take ownership, you stop waiting for opportunity and you start creating it. The success people admire today is nothing but the permanent ink of decisions made by someone who refused to hand his pen to anyone else. Ownership is not just about taking credit when things go right. It's about standing tall when things go wrong. Most people run from their mistakes, blame others, or pretend it wasn't their fault. But when you carry an ownership mindset, even your failures are lessons that make you stronger. If you can say, "I messed up and it's on me to fix it," you automatically place yourself in a position of power. Jay-Z made mistakes, but instead of letting them bury him, he used them as bricks to build higher. He never let his past define him, because ownership means you always have the power to write the next chapter differently. The permanent ink of your mistakes doesn't have to be a stain. It can be the underline of the lesson that pushed you into greatness. Think about how this applies to time, energy, and relationships. An ownership mindset makes you treat your time like currency. If every decision is permanent, then wasting hours on people who drain you or spending nights drowning in distractions isn't harmless. It's writing failure into your story. Jay-Z didn't climb from nothing to a billionaire by entertaining every call, every party, every distraction. He learned to say no because ownership requires discipline. Every yes you give to something small is a no to something big. Ownership means valuing your time, because once it's written into your story, you can't erase it. Another layer of ownership is refusing to let anyone else own your identity. That's why Jay-Z fought for his masters, why he invested in businesses, why he refused to be boxed in as just a rapper. He understood that true freedom comes from ownership, not dependence. When you don't own your choices, your art, your vision, or your time, you're just a character in someone else's script. But when you take ownership, you not only write your own story, you control how long it lasts, who it impacts, and how it's remembered. That's legacy. That's permanence. That's the reason his name will be studied decades from now. The mindset of ownership strips away illusions about luck. People say Jay-Z got lucky. No, luck doesn't write billion-dollar futures in permanent ink. Ownership does. Luck is temporary, but decisions backed by accountability are permanent. Ownership demands that you look in the mirror and accept that your habits, your work ethic, your sacrifices, and your standards are shaping your destiny right now. Every single move is recorded. Not in pencil that can be erased, but in ink that the world will read forever. Jay-Z's story is proof that when you take ownership, you stop being a product of your circumstances and start being the author of your future. That's the power of living like your pen belongs only to you. Cutting out negativity is one of the hardest but most necessary decisions you can ever make, because the people, environments, and voices you surround yourself with are not neutral. They're either pushing you forward or pulling you back. Every conversation you allow, every influence you tolerate, every friend you keep in your circle, it all gets written into the permanent ink of your future. Negativity is contagious, and if you're not careful, it creeps into your mindset, poisons your confidence, convinces you to settle for less than you do. Jay's understood this very early on. Growing up in Marcy projects, he was surrounded by chaos, drugs, and crime. He saw friends taken out by the streets, people who had talent and dreams but let negativity drown them until nothing was left. He knew if he didn't cut out the noise, he would end up another name in a forgotten story. So he made the tough choice. He distanced himself from people who didn't believe, from environments that killed vision, from voices that told him he couldn't. Negativity doesn't always come as open hate. Sometimes it shows up as subtle doubt. The friend who tells you to stop trying because no one makes it out. The relative who says you should just play it safe. The crowd that laughs at you for dreaming too big. If you let those voices stay close, they slowly convince you to shrink. Every time you entertain that energy, you're letting someone else write your story in permanent ink, and their ink isn't pushing you toward greatness. It's scribbling mediocrity across your future. Jay-Z faced that pressure. But instead of listening to people who told him he couldn't, he doubled down on his vision. He didn't allow negative energy to dictate his script. He chose to believe in his own pen. And that decision protected him from being trapped by other people's limitations. The truth is, cutting out negativity often feels lonely because it means saying goodbye to people you've known for years. It means creating distance from those who aren't growing even if you love them. It means guarding your dreams from voices that want to shrink them. But loneliness is temporary and wasted potential is permanent. Jay-Z wasn't afraid of being misunderstood. He knew that protecting his mindset was more valuable than pleasing the crowd. That's why he built his own circle, people who believed in the vision, people who wanted to see him win. That's the power of choosing your environment wisely. Never can destroy a vision faster than lack of talent, and positivity can fuel a dream faster than opportunity. Think about how negativity operates. It feeds on your energy. When you spend time with negative people, you walk away drained, second guessing yourself, doubting your worth. When you spend time in negative environments, you adapt to the standard around you and call it normal. But once you start cutting it out, you create space for growth. You create silence where you can hear your own thoughts. You create an atmosphere where positivity, creativity, and belief can breathe. Jay-Z made sure his circle wasn't just filled with people, it was filled with believers. Hustlers, visionaries, those who were committed to the same standard of excellence. By cutting out negativity, he multiplied his own strength because positivity compounds just like habits do. Negativity isn't just about people. It's also about what you consume, the music you listen to, the shows you watch, the content you scroll through. It all programs your mind. If you feed yourself negativity every day, you're writing fear, doubt, and chaos into your future. Jay-Z chose to put his energy into creativity, into words, into beats that told his story instead of drowning in noise. That decision mattered. He wasn't just making music. He was shaping a mindset, training his focus, deciding what ink would write his future. That's why his songs speak about growth, ownership, and vision. They reflect the choice to cut out destructive influences and replace them with building blocks. The permanent ink of your future is too valuable to let negativity stain it. You can't build an empire with anchors tied to your feet. You can't write a story of success while letting toxic voices hold the pen. Jay-Z shows us that greatness requires separation, that protecting your energy is not selfish, it's survival. Cutting out negativity is an act of discipline, of love for your future self, of commitment to the destiny you want. It may hurt in the short term, but in the long term, it saves your life, your vision, your purpose. Because at the end of the day, your story will be permanent. And the question is, did you allow negativity to write it for you? Or did you cut it out and write something powerful with your own hand? Risk and reward are two sides of the same coin. And if you want to live a life worth remembering, you have to accept that every great achievement is born from a decision that felt uncomfortable at the time. Playing it safe might feel secure in the moment, but it writes a story of regret and permanent ink. Jay-Z understood that from the beginning. Nothing about his rise was safe. He didn't come from a world that promised him opportunity. He came from a place that told him success was almost impossible. But instead of letting fear dictate his future, he embraced risk as the price of greatness. Selling CDs out of the trunk of his car when no label wanted him was a risk. Starting Rockefeller Records with no blueprint was a risk. Investing in businesses beyond music, from fashion to streaming, was a risk. But those risks brought rewards that shaped him into a mogul, not just an artist. Without those bold decisions, the story of Jay-Z would be smaller, maybe even forgotten. With them, his name is written in permanent ink across industries and generations. Most people misunderstand risk. They think it means recklessness, jumping without a parachute, gambling everything blindly. But real risk is calculated, intentional, and rooted in vision. Jay-Z didn't take risks just for the thrill of it. He took risks that aligned with his purpose. That's the key. If you risk for nothing, you gain nothing. But if you risk for something bigger than yourself, you open the door to rewards that average people never see. Every risk he took was backed by preparation, skill, and a willingness to bet on himself. That's what makes the difference. People who fear risk are really fearing responsibility. They don't trust their own ability to handle the consequences, so they settle into comfort. But the problem with comfort is it writes a small story, a safe story, one that nobody remembers. Permanent ink doesn't fade. And when you choose safety over vision, you're permanently locking yourself into a life of what if risk also tests your belief in yourself. It asks the question, do you believe in your talent enough to bet on it? Do you believe in your vision enough to build it even when no one else sees it? Jay-Z's decision to fund his own label is a test of self-belief, and he passed it. The world said no, but he said yes, and that yes carried more weight than 1,000 rejections. That's what risk does. It gives you the chance to prove to yourself that you're serious. Without risk, talk is just talk, dreams are just fantasies. But when you risk something for your vision, you're telling the universe, I'm all in. That's when the rewards start to show, because commitment always attracts opportunity. The reward doesn't always show up immediately. Risk often feels painful before it feels powerful. You might lose money, lose friends, lose comfort, and still wonder if it was worth it. Jay-Z faced doubt, failure, setbacks, and critics. But because he was willing to stay the course, those temporary losses turned into long-term victories. The reward was not just wealth, but ownership, freedom, and influence. That's the kind of reward that only comes from risk, because safe decisions can only produce safe outcomes. When you're writing your future in permanent ink, you don't want the pages filled with safety nets and half steps. You want them filled with bold moves that define you. Risk is the ink of greatness, and reward is the signature at the bottom of the page. Every person faces moments where they stand at the edge of a decision, looking at the risk, feeling the most step back, a few step forward. Those few are the ones who change their future forever. Jay-Z stepped forward again and again, and that's why he's not just another rapper who came and went. He's a global icon whose name is etched permanently into culture. The truth is, The rewards of life, success, freedom, legacy, are reserved for those who are willing to do what others were too afraid to do. If you refuse to risk, you refuse to grow, and if you refuse to grow, your story will be one of survival instead of success. The permanent ink of your decisions will either tell the world you dare to bet on yourself or confess that you let fear write your story for you. Legacy is written now, not later. And that's the truth most people avoid because they think they'll have time down the road to figure it out. They imagine legacy is something that happens after they've achieved greatness, after they've made millions, after they're gone. But the reality is that legacy isn't created in the future. It's being written every single day in the decisions you make. Jay-Z didn't wait until he was a billionaire to build his legacy. He was shaping it back when he was writing rhymes in a notebook and selling CDs hand to hand. Every verse he wrote, every deal he made, every risk he took was a line in the permanent ink of his legacy. That's why his story resonates today, because the foundation was built long before the world noticed. Legacy isn't just about what people remember when you're gone. It's about what you're creating in the present that echoes into the future. When you choose discipline instead of distraction, when you choose growth instead of excuses, when you choose to invest in something lasting instead of wasting energy on things that fade, you're shaping the story people will tell about you. Jay's legacy isn't only that he made music, it's that he redefined ownership in the music industry, that he created opportunities for others, that he showed kids from the same projects he grew up in that they could rise higher than their circumstances. That didn't happen overnight. It happened through consistent choices stacked one on top of the other until the narrative was undeniable. The danger of misunderstanding legacy is thinking that small choices don't matter. But if your life is being written in permanent ink, then every choice becomes part of the story, whether you meant for it to or not. The way you